All right, now we're good. Okay.
All right, welcome everyone to another Adventure Together live stream. I am Salpy, head of game design here at Adventure Together. I'm joined by Himaro and Shaper. Himaro is head of project management and helps me with game design and has his foot in all departments. And Shaper is our head of creative direction. Yeah. So, the purpose of today's live stream is to take a deep dive into the mechanics, the cards, everything about TimeStrike, and really show everyone what the game's all about. We're gonna go through a lot of the different, just about every mechanic, every card, and we'll wrap it up with a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, thoughts, just post them in the chat on YouTube, Facebook, Discord, and we'll gather those and answer them at the end.
Yeah, just to
Tomorrow,
mention,
Shaper, anything you want to start with? Yeah.
yeah, to mention before we get in, so we're going to be making a formal announcement later this week. And for those of you who are watching, please feel free to ask any questions you want in the Facebook chat or in the YouTube chat. But we have decided that the final day of the Game Found Pledge Manager will be June 13th. So we'll be making a formal announcement, but we are ending the Game Found Pledge Manager in about 14 days from now on June 13th. So those of you who backed on Kickstarter and need to finalize your pledges, enter your shipping information and your tax details, you can do that on GameFound. If you have any questions, concerns, reach out to us on GameFound or at support@adventuretogether.games or DM us in the Adventure Together Discord. You can join that by going to discord.gg/adventure together.
All right, and I just want to add before we kick it off that a huge thank you to everyone who's backed us today. We just crossed, I believe, 275,000 in backing. We're absolutely floored. We couldn't be more grateful because of what Tony's about to go through is possible. So thank you guys so much. What a fantastic community.
All right, so right into TimeStrike. This is our first official game for Source. And one of our goals with TimeStrike is to really showcase all the different things you could do with Source while also building a game that features a lot of things that we've all wanted to play ourselves over the years. So our first box of Source is called Shadow of Fear. So TimeStrike is an accessible miniatures war game built as a boss battle royale. The first theme box, Shadow of Fear, has 13 different characters and features 3 different game modes. TimeStrike is about the players managing their team of characters and moving throughout the void, performing different actions, and trying to survive the end of time by eliminating their enemy, whether it's a big AI boss or just another team of characters. Your goal is to survive to the end. Now, like I said, our first game is Shadow of Fear, which you can see on the left here is a little depiction of Fear. He's your first sentience, the first boss that you'll be battling. He likes to spawn. His thing is he likes to send out a lot of curses to the world and spawn tentacles to attack you throughout the void. And then our second box that will follow up is called Heart of Desire, and you can see a depiction of Desire on the right side. Not all the details have been finalized about his mechanics, his gameplay yet, but he will come with another set. That box will come with another set of 13 characters that can all be mixed and mingled between the first box and the second box. So you could use the characters from Shadow of Fear and fight the ones from Heart of Desire, or mix the sentiences. It all is cross compatible, and it's all standalone as well. So if you were just to pick up Heart of Desire, you still have a complete game. The benefits, though, are when you start picking up multiple packs and start mixing and matching the characters and the play styles and the mechanics. And as the game goes on, we'll be adding more and more mechanics to the game based on the box. So we have a lot of unique mechanics in the game. Like I said, Source, we were trying to show, one of the goals was to showcase a lot of what you could do with Source. So this is just a little clip of placing placing a road and building a wall. So all of our source hexes are non-interlocking. So it's very easy to place them down, pick them up. And in this instance, this character here actually mined resources, and you can kind of see the obsidian in the back. It's black. Was able to go over there, pick up that resource, and then use that to build roads and walls. So there's a lot of destruction and building built into the game, uh, which we really haven't seen before in tabletop. Uh, our next thing that we really thought was unique to the genre was our ability to mount miniatures. So right here is an instance of Roland taming Abaddon, a giant monster, to use him to attack the world. And then in this instance playing here, multiple characters are climbing up Fear's back and attacking him, and Fear is going around destroying the world at the same time, busting up bridges and all sorts of things. So another one of so on top of the building and the destruction, we have the mountable miniatures that will be coming in the game as well.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that a little bit. So, to Salpy's point, we really tried to showcase within TimeStrike the functional benefits and the new functions that Source brings to tabletop gaming. They're the 3D aspect and the height, as well as our newly designed miniatures, which we haven't seen in the industry before, where we actually have mountable tops on these miniatures, allow us to kind of make almost what we call behemoths or super miniatures, where you combine two miniatures into a single miniature, which also increases its strength and adds abilities that maybe it didn't have before. So it's really, really exciting the first time, and I can't wait for people to actually do it. The first time you take a miniature that's smaller and you mount it on a larger miniature, and it fits so nicely and snug, and you start moving around with that, it's a really, really powerful moment where you realize, hey, there's something here. And it was Chris who said years ago, I want our miniatures not only to be beautiful, but functional. And nobody in the industry is making their miniatures super functional. And that was something that we really, really strive to do. So we're excited for everyone to get their hands on it and experience that.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited about how this sort of changes the meta of the game. I think that there's obviously, when you're selecting your team, right, you're trying to find the best synergies between characters to make your team really powerful. But what being able to tame does is it makes that sort of synergistic play between your team dynamic. So the synergies are kind of changing as the game goes, because if you're able to tame a certain monster, suddenly that could kind of change the composition and the strategy that you went into the game thinking you were going to use. And you have to be adaptable and sort of react to that as it happens. And then obviously, with the boss, it creates this element where the world is not fixed either. So the world's dynamic, and it's kind of changing the strategy constantly as you're playing, and you have to kind of reconsider what you thought was going to work in any given minute. Like, normally you plan multiple turns ahead as to what you're going to do and in what order you're going to do it. But when a sentience comes, barreling through a mountain that, was formerly your strategic, point that you were holding, or was like a line of sight blocker you were using, now you have to react. Not just because he's a threat, but because, your defensive and or offensive, uh, strategy is no longer present. So these are the things that I love, in addition to what Nick mentioned, which is just that, miniatures that are functional are just way cooler. And I think we're going to keep pushing it further, right? Like, we can start to build bosses that are massive. I, love the idea of a world boss that, you can just climb armies on top of. So we're going to keep seeing how far we can take this. And I think that, apart from just how awesome it's going to end up looking on your board, how much fun they're going to be to paint, it's going to continue to make playing this game exciting every time you sit down.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll add to that is, because, like we talked about the monster taming, but most of the time when you're actually moving around on characters, it's going to be climbing the sentience, which you can use to get height advantage, attack from its back. But one of the unique things that happens is that you may have started your team in a corner, and you send one of your characters to climb on the sentience because you can get loot up there, and you could deal some damage and maybe strengthen your character. And then all of a sudden, the next turn, the sentience moves to the other side of the map. So you're getting transported around on this giant boss, and kind of having to react to this dynamic creature just blowing up the map, moving you around, moving other people around. It's really something unique. All right, and I'll move to the next one. So, the last unique part about TimeStrike is its scalability. So the way it was built, it encompasses the ability to have multiple, not multiple, but different player counts, different time lengths of the game, so that you can play the way you want. So TimeStrike is laid out to have specific characters, and you can draw a team of characters to then fight against each other. So you could do a 1v1 where you have a team of 3 characters and you're fighting your friend who has a team of 3 characters. In this picture here, during one of our demos, we did 2 teams of 3, and then every person just picked one character and they went onto a team. So that same scenario where you did a 1v1, you could automatically adapt it into a 3v3. And you can kind of mix and match how you want to play and how many characters you want to play with, so that you can have longer or shorter games. And again, with multiple boxes, you'll be able to have bigger and bigger player counts, or bigger and bigger character counts, and really push the limits of what kind of crazy battle you can create with this game. Okay. So, TimeStrike is coming with 3 game modes. The first one is our flagship mode. It is the Boss Battle Royale. This features every aspect of all the mechanics that we built, and it will put you and your team of characters, or specifically survivors, that you'll be drawing from, and we'll go over the different character roles in a minute. But you'll be drawing from the survivors and creating a team with those survivors and dropping into the void. Your goal then is to defeat the giant fear AI, who will have monsters under its control and will be spawning tentacles to fight you, as well as defeat any other teams that are playing. So if you did a free-for-all of 3 people and each of you had your own team, not only would you have to work together to destroy fear, you'd also then have to turn on each other and defeat each other to become the victor. So the goal of the game changes as you move through it, because if you let fear go around for too long, he might destroy you all. We also have a unique mechanic called the myth system, which is specific to the Boss Battle Royale mode, in which whoever gets knocked out, or anyone that gets knocked out before the boss dies, then becomes the boss. So they can take their revenge on the people that knocked them out, and maybe try to, and then their goal is to defeat everyone. So if Himaro, Shaper, and myself are playing and I got knocked out, my goal would then to be knock both of them out, so that I can win as Fear, or essentially, we all, the board wins as Fear. So that's our flagship mode that encompasses all the different things and aspects of the game.
And what's the exact win condition, Salpy? Can you go over the exact win condition for people?
Sure. You have to defeat all of the AI and all of the other player teams. So it's just strictly an elimination-based game.
Soft elimination because of that myth system, really, because even if you knock a player out, they still play. And the reason in the beginning, when we started developing TimeStrike, and we were like, okay, we know we want this to be some sort of combat-based game, and we were circling around the idea of a battle royale, and now it's become what we call a boss battle royale, because there's this new aspect that we haven't really seen in too many battle royale games, of a giant boss kind of moving on its own to some extent and malignantly terrorizing the world and changing the landscape. We were like, well, we don't want people to get knocked out and then be done playing. Nobody likes that, when somebody gets knocked out and then you look over and your buddy's on his phone because he's like, well, I'm done for the night. This is how we solved that and allowed people to remain involved and remain, what's the word I'm looking for? Remain interested And especially me individually, I love to get revenge on everybody. So if I'm knocked out early, I'm like, well, your mistake, I'm coming after you, and I will literally focus the guy who knocked me out or whoever it was that knocked me out. I'll go right after that team, and I'll start trying to make it harder for them to be successful. So there adds this level of politics almost, and this management of how fast you want to knock people off. You could either knock them out really, really fast and say, okay, I'll just deal with you as fear, or you could say, hey, let's weaken fear first before we start the combat. You know, I'll be good to you. You don't take any pop shots at me, and we'll see where this goes from there. I always like that about the game, that it's kind of, it could go a myriad of different ways really, really quickly, based on how everybody's feeling that night, whether they're hyper aggressive or they want to play more of a tech strategic style where they're slowly scaling their team until they're ready to engage in combat.
Yeah, I think maybe the word you're looking for there is engaged, right? Every player is engaged throughout the duration of the experience, and that's super important. I think that's, the sign of a great game is when you can ensure and find a way to make sure that every player that's there at that table on every turn, whether it's your turn or another player's turn, is engaged.
Yep.
You're immersed in the experience. It's not enough for it to be fun. It's got to be fun even when it's not your turn. And so that's what I think the myth system really helps keep the game engaging, regardless of whether you're winning or losing or what stage or whose turn it is.
Yeah, and it's actually what I've found when I've played with it is that when you have that boss element there, and let's say you have a head-to-head and you're kind of falling behind, you could almost use the boss in your own way to help gain some ground back. Because if you say fall behind, let's say you lose a character or two early on your team, you can say, well, I'm just basically going to team up with the boss and come after you, because now you have to take me out and the boss. And if you take me out, I just become the boss. So it adds a little backup plan of like, all right, it didn't go the way I planned, so now I'm going to revert to the second strategy of working with the AI to hopefully knock out the opponent, but I still have to keep in mind I still have to knock out this AI. So I'm playing like this little balancing act throughout the game.
And you said something really, really important to me there, which was it didn't go as planned. Playing in the void of TimeStrike hardly ever goes as planned, and I think that's what really lends itself to the storytelling capabilities of TimeStrike. Source is kind of your first layer. It's almost like blockchain in my mind, right? Source is kind of your first layer, and then you add these experiences on top of it. And because Source creates such an immersive experience where you're really seeing the characters move across the board, you're seeing them climb mountains, go through waterfalls, traverse rivers, build roads. The next step is, okay, provide characters that are also as immersive. And in TimeStrike, we have extensive lore behind all of our characters. So as you're going through and you're traveling and you're like, oh, I have this really, really good strategy. I'm going to get up on the mountain with one of my archers and I'm going to pop shot him from above. And then fear comes over and knocks the mountain over and your archer goes, I'm falling, and smashes to the ground. And now your archer doesn't have that advantage, so you need to pivot. I find that to be really, really exciting because I always remember the last time I played TimeStrike. I always remembered the games that I've played with Chris and Tony even 3-4 years ago. And my memory is terrible. And I remember these moments where Chris took this character that is not even released to you guys yet called the He Kind, and he went and he hit me for a 36. And I was like, wait, what happened? So there's these moments where they just stick in your mind forever. And that can't happen anymore. That's been play tested. But those are the moments that I'll always remember. So I always find it really, really fun to go back and look at and remember these stories that have been created in the void, while just being immersed in this experience with my friends.
I think the word that comes to mind when I think about, how your plans don't pan out, that kind of like describes what it's like, or it describes sort of what's happening to you. But I think the experience we wanted there for players was for them to have to adapt. We optimized for you to have to adapt constantly. You can go in with a strategy, but you're going to be forced to adapt constantly throughout the game. And for me, that's it's just a really fun challenge, and it keeps me engaged in the game because I have to constantly be re-strategizing, which is it's something I enjoy about life as well. It's really unpredictable, and you can have the best laid plans, and then boom, everything changes on you, and you have to adapt. So I think that's something that's fundamental about this game is that you're going to have to approach it and be prepared to adapt your strategy. You don't just get to stick to your guns and keep trying the same thing over and over again. And if you're unwilling to adapt, the game will punish you. And I think that's probably one of my favorite aspects of playing it.
Yeah.
I think it also adds to the replayability. You're not going to go in and be able to do the same strategy every time, even if you pick the same characters and the same team every time. You're going to be able to really have a different experience. Even if you pick the same characters and you go in with the same strategy, it's never going to be the same because the board is the whole world is very dynamic. It's ever changing. It's all over the place. So I just find that to be really, really, really fun.
Okay, well, to continue on, our second mode is a boss raid, so that's specifically you and your friends team up against the boss. In which case, again, you will pick from the group of survivors, which I'll dive into what survivors are and what sentience is and all the different roles in a minute. And you could do that mode for 2 to 8 characters. So if you just wanted to play on your own, you could say, I'm going to play with 3, 4, 5 characters. Or I'm just going to play with 2 characters and my buddy's coming over and he's going to play with 2 characters. Or you want to do 1 and 1. That mode also scales as well. So that you can play against just an AI and work together. And probably the most fun part about that mode is that as your team, you all play simultaneously. So whereas a normal take turn in a war game, it's like, oh, you go with this character, then I go, then you go, then I go. When you're working together as a team, it's like, oh, well, let me try to use this ability, and then you can come in with this ability, then you could do this action, and then I can finish with an attack if this doesn't work. And you can kind of plan out these things and work together simultaneously, which is a lot of fun. The last mode is the skirmish mode, which is working off of a point system where you will say, all right, we're going to play 400 point teams. And you can look through all the characters and say, all right, I'm going to grab this one for 300, this one for 100, or this one for 300, and these 2 for 50s. And we'll dive into that in a minute. But there is just an all out battle skirmish mode built into the game as well. And those are our 3 modes. So, what do the character cards look like? So on the left is the back of the card. It says, the first thing you'll see is the artwork. We have beautiful artwork for all of our characters. We have deep story for all of our characters. We have a ton of lore written for the worlds that they came from, how they interacted with the other characters, and who they are. Which who they are and how they look really has driven a lot of the skills and the way they play in the game. So that was kind of the way we built everything. Was the way they played was built off of the way they looked and the lore behind them. So, for instance, Roland, at the bottom right of the back, you could say he is a survivor. So that is a specific role. Survivors can be drawn in the boss battle royale mode and the boss raid to be played specifically for those role. How am I saying this? You can only draw survivors for those first 2 modes. And in the skirmish mode, survivors always cost 100 each. And if you look at their main card, the face of the card, that is a double layer cardboard indented card. So all these little cubes and things and little spots that kind of look like they're slots will have spots for you to place cubes that will actually fit in there snugly. And that way, if you bump the card, pick up the card, stuff isn't shifting around. It's just laid in there. And to go over the face of the card real quick, on the left side you have another picture of the character with his name and a model of the miniature. And you'll see a little red dot where basically their vision point is. So as long as their vision point can see who they're attacking, they can target that unit if they have the range. You'll see some other stats up there. On the top left, you'll see survivor. That's their role. You'll see how many units this character has. So certain characters have multiple units. Some have 1. You have their height and their energy. Their energy is how many actions they can perform on a turn. So TimeStrike has a lot more than just attacking and defending. We have a lot of like RPG elements like fishing, mining, contesting that we'll go into in a minute. You have their health bar next to those, and then down the middle is a lot of the stats. So you have their move stat, their range, their attack, their defense, and these are all based off of dice. The attack and defense are based off of dice rolls, and then the move is based off of hexes, and so is the range. So if I had a move of 6, I could move 6 hexes. But there are different rules for if you're moving while you're in water, while you're swimming, or if you are trying to move up a mountainside. Those numbers will change. And there's different types of movement as well. Some characters fly, some characters swim, some characters burrow. So we'll go into some of that in a bit. Next to those stats, you'll see awakenings, buffs, and curses, and there's a column for each of them. So buffs and curses are things that can affect your character during the game, either through skills, gameplay items, all sorts of things that will change those stats until they are removed or added. So if I got the move buff, I would just count across and say I have 6 plus 1 for my move buff, 7. So these are small ways you'll be incrementing your character. Or if someone attacked me and gave me the move curse, I would then have 6 minus 2, so I'd be down to 4. So it'd be in my interest to get rid of that. At the very bottom, there is specific curses and buffs named Stealth, Enrage, Affliction, and Silence, and we can go into detail if someone later, but I won't go into each of those now, but they all have specific roles, mechanics tied to each of them and how it affects your character. The first lane, the first column where it says Awakenings is a unique trait to survivors, where they will have to complete certain trials to unlock these permanent stat upgrades throughout the game. So there is an experience building element that you have to complete specific things for specific characters to unlock these traits, and we'll go into trials later. The last and probably the most important part is on the right side. You have that skill sheet. This is all the skills that you'll be able to you'll have access to throughout the game, and there's 4 types. There's abilities that you can cast. There's attacks, which anytime you attack, you can just supplement it with a attack type skill. There's defense types abilities, which is the same thing. If you're having to defend, you could just say, I'm using my defense skill. And then the last ones are passive. So these are things that are always active, which we'll see on some future characters. And that sums up the board. The last thing I'll mention, in the bottom middle-ish, there's something called exhaustion. So the way our rounds work per game while playing TimeStrike is that each character will take a turn and then they're marked exhausted. And once all of your characters are exhausted, then the round will essentially reset. Or if you're playing with an AI, once all the characters are exhausted, the AI will then take its turn and then the rounds will reset. And then I'd like to move on to talking about the roles and the characters. Chris or Nick, do you have anything to add there about the card?
There was a comment in YouTube saying the skirmish mode sounds neat. I don't think we've talked about any kind of a point system for the units before, so I don't know if you're planning on going into the point system now or later, but just pointing that out.
I can go into it on this next slide because we're going to show some more points.
Sure.
So let's dive right into that. So talking about roles. So I talked about survivors. There's also the Sentience, which you see on the left. He's a 300-point character you can draw. He's fun because he is a giant monster, and people can climb on his back during the game while you're controlling him, and he'll be spawning these tentacles throughout the game. So he's scaled to be as strong as 3 survivors. Then you have Abaddon, which is a brute. Abaddon is one of those monsters that you can mount. So let's say I drew, and he's basically equivalent to a survivor. The difference is that he gets his stats initially. He doesn't have those awakenings, but a character who can get those awakenings will end up stronger over the life of the game. Brutes just are a bit stronger out of the gate, and they're a bit beefier. They're more defensive. They have higher health. But you can always choose to mount. Let's say I chose Roland, the character I just showed before, and Abaddon. I could either play them as separate characters, or I could put them together and play them in one turn, and that's called a behemoth. And there's one special mechanic that goes along behemoth, where if the brute defends an attack coming towards itself and its rider, if it blocks it, its rider doesn't have to roll defense. It's completely safe. So there's just one mechanic. So that's just your one kind of like stronger piece of being mounted is you're a little bit tankier. However, they can deal double damage to you if they get through, because if they attack Abaddon, they essentially are attacking me at the same time. The last one at the top is Magi. He's a beast. So beasts, when you tame them, they are attached like a multi-unit character. So if I had Mara the Meek and I had Magi, I could run them around independently. There's no mounting. They have their own cards, but they play at the same time. So a beast is attached to a character. You can also choose in the skirmish mode to play that character separately or keep them connected. And the reason we kind of there is a future thing, which I'll talk about a bit, which are called armies. Armies are going to be more of our multi-unit characters, like much higher character counts, and the idea behind them is that when you draw an army, you can use your points to draw as many units for that army as you want. So if I had, and I don't have any cards to show for it yet, but we have play tested it. It's with armies and how they have their own styling of how they work. But essentially, if I drew an army card, let's say of the Mystics, and it's 50 points, it'll say 50 points plus 25 per character. So that means if I wanted to draw, 4 characters, or sorry, it's 50 points for the card and the first character, and then 25 per additional character. So if I wanted to draw 3 characters, that would be 100. If I wanted to draw 6 characters on that one, that would be a 200 point character, which we really haven't shown off yet, but this is kind of the reason why we moved to a point system, because we have these future plans for bigger battles with a lot more like units that have lower health pools. Yeah, and the 3 roles we show here, Sentience, Brute, and Beast, whenever you play the boss battle royale or the boss raid mode, these are your AI. They will always be the AI. The Beast and the Brute can be tamed. The Sentience has to be killed. But you could also just defeat the Beast and the Brute.
And there was a question in YouTube that we addressed in YouTube, but I wanted to bring it to the attention of everyone who's watching. If you could just go back one slide, Salpy, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're starting the game and you draft your team, you're actually going to be placing the cubes in the character card slots to start. And then as you gain awakenings, buffs, and curses, you'll be removing them to reveal the values. It's not you're filling them in as you gain them. So as you gain them, you're removing the cubes. And if you lose them, you're adding the cubes back to hide those values. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, I have a picture I think right at the end, a slide where it shows a character card full of cubes. Essentially, you start completely filled, and then you'll be revealing your new stats. So you're not seeing all these numbers up front, you're just seeing cubes, and then you'll see the stat numbers pop up as you move forward throughout the game.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go into characters. So we're going to dive into about 5 different characters and just talk about specifically where they came from and their skills and how they play.
And all of these characters are from Shadow of Fear? I just want to clarify.
No.
Okay.
And I'll go over which ones are from Shadow of Fear and which ones are previews of new characters.
Awesome.
For Heart of Desire. So the first one is Mara the Meek. You can see her role is kind of like an ice mage. But the world she comes from, the Meek, we have 4 different races right now. We have the Meek, the Fallen, the She-Kind, and the Lamplighters. And they all kind of have an overarching play style that accompanies them, which I'll go into right now. So the Meek tend to work more intuitively with buffs and curses, so they're sometimes get more rewards for being buffed and get hit harder when being cursed. So if you look at her stats, her range and her attack curse are both -2, but her defense buff is +2 and her range is +2. So it's something that you need to just play around, and certain characters that have those curses will want to target people that are weaker against curses like this. But also she'll look for things to help maintain her buffs on her, because without them she'll become weaker. But if we go over to her skills, her 3 skills are Blizzard, which the first one is an AoE attack. So she can drop AoE attack targeting. She has to target a unit, and she has to pick a hex under that unit, because some of the units are multi-hex, and then it'll hit everyone in that shape that's depicted there. Now, the interesting thing about TimeStrike is there's friendly fire, there's self damage. It's very, I would say, realistic in that way, where we don't kind of say, "Oh, you can't hit your allies." So if she blizzards right on someone in front of her, she's technically engaged. So she's just calling down a rain of ice on herself, on her friends, on her enemies. Whoever's in that area will get attacked. So placement and placement of characters is really important when you're trying to perform certain actions. Her next ability is Frost Nova, which essentially she can dish out the move curse to those who are engaged with her, and also get away without getting hit. So we have a mechanic in our game called Cheap Shot, which essentially when you try to leave a battle just by moving away, they can roll a die and see if they can get a free cheap shot on you, which is a free damage. This Frost Nova essentially would, if you think of it from a thematic point of view, would freeze them in place. It gives them the move curse and allows her to get out of there without being attacked because, they're stuck in place. But they're not stuck. They just get the move curse. The last one is Ice Barrier. So this one is when she defends an attack from an engaged unit. So it can't be a ranged shot. It has to be an engaged unit. She can roll a lucky block to block an additional hit and give the attacker the move curse. And this is a good point to talk about lucky rolls. So on our dice, we have combat dice, which are 6-sided die. There's 3 attacks and 2 defense. Of the attack and defense, there's 1 lucky in each of those. So there's 1 of the 3 attacks is lucky, and then 1 of the 2 defense is lucky. And a lot of our skills and trials, which you'll see in the future, will trigger these things when you get those lucky hits in, or lucky blocks in. And in this instance, she's looking for lucky blocks.
What percent chance is that for lucky?
It's a 16.6 repeating chance of rolling a lucky block or rolling a lucky hit when you are going after that. So something unique about the game too is that early on with these skills and things, you won't see these attacks, defends, whatever you need luckies for proccing as much, but as people's stats go up and up and up and up, all of a sudden you're able to trigger that ice barrier every time you're fighting or some other thing. So you actually see these skills become stronger as you level up your character essentially. I just clicked. Okay, the next one we'll talk about Gula. So Gula is from the Fallen universe, and specifically, if I talk about the Fallen, there's kind of like, can you actually explain the overarching idea behind the Fallen shaper real quick? Basically about the 2 different sides.
Sure. So the Fallen takes place in an alternate Earth universe where the Battle of Armageddon took place and the forces of Hell won. So there is always going to be the sinful, and there's going to be the sort of holy and or heretics who are kind of trying to fight back against those forces. The human population is down to about 11% left on the face of the earth. Most of them are living underground. So it's kind of a dreadful and dire situation. So the Fallen are mostly made up of really dark, sinister, evil characters, and then on the light side, you kind of have just survivors who are trying to make it. And they've been pushed back to medieval times, so they're slightly medieval and slightly holy inspired.
Thank you. And so that goes into the overarching mechanics between what we'll call the sinful and the heretics. So within the Fallen universe, they like to play with curses. That's like the main theme behind the Fallen. And specifically, the sinful Fallen will sometimes prefer to be cursed. So if you look at Gula's card in her curses column, you'll see it, if she gets the move curse or the attack curse, she actually increases her damage or increases her move. Some of the curses still affect her negatively, but throughout the different characters, they'll have different curses that they actually prefer to have, which is kind of their overarching mechanic. And then Gula specifically, if you can look at her, she's a glutton. So her whole kit is based around self-healing, keeping herself alive with her healing because her defense isn't going to be great. So if you look at her first skill, Devour, up on the top right, she needs to roll a lucky hit while attacking to regain a health. Simple. She can gain health just by attacking. Her next one, which is an ability called Glutton, she can go over to a friendly unit and bite them and deal a damage to them and gain 2 health back. So she could basically go sacrifice health of one of her allies to get that health back, or get 2 health back.
You just gotta watch
the
out.
last
She
one
could bite a Moggy in half in one bite. You gotta be careful.
Yeah. The last one is called Corpse Feast. So if Gula is engaged to a unit that is defeated, she will essentially feast and be able to get another health that way. So she primarily will be strongest when the armies come out, really, because she'll be looking for those quick heals by knocking out those 1 health units and things. So she's constantly looking to heal herself. She's very selfish. And that's kind of her play style.
Yeah, I love Gula, and I love the idea of the Fallen, because typically in a game, right, you see curses, you see buffs. You're like, okay, curses are bad, buffs are good. And then we kind of said, okay, well, this race really enjoys curses. So they're actually on the hunt to get cursed so that they can actually get stronger. And it kind of tweaks it to where now if you have a character that inflicts curses on another unit, and you're the Fallen, you're like, oh, I hope I end up fighting them. Rather than, oh, please don't curse me. It's like, yes, yes, come to me. So I just find that really fun and, again, dynamic, and helps the game just really play differently based on what you have going on, and you have a better attention to detail.
Go ahead.
I was just going to answer this question here in the chat. Was that what you were going to do?
That's a big question, Chris. That could be a stream in itself. Okay, knock it out.
I can knock it out. So Alex from the chat asked, what was the design process like for creating the game's visuals and components? It looks stunning. Additionally, what are some of the challenges you face throughout character development and balance? So Tony can touch on character development and balance. In terms of the visuals and the components, it's as simple as we worked with some of the greatest, most talented artists all around the world. We were constantly on this, hunting and searching for artists that we thought could bring this vision to life in the way that we knew it needed to be brought to life. We're all also graphic designers here. I think like almost every member of the team has some sort of graphic design skills. So we worked with a lot of really talented people. I can't name all of them because there's so many. But we put a lot of emphasis on that because we love great visuals and we wanted this to feel alive when you played it. In terms of the components and whatnot, yeah, it just a lot of love. We weren't in a rush. We took our time. We worked with great people, and then it was all informed by storytelling. That was another really important piece of this, is that we didn't do anything just based on what looked cool. We wanted to make sure that everything had a really deep story behind it, and that makes the creative process so much smoother and so much more exciting and so much more inspiring.
And just to give a little bit of insight from the inside, each of us, every time we developed a character, whoever was responsible for that race, so I did the Lamplighters, Shaper did the Fallen, Salpy did the Meek, and Hannah, who's not here tonight, did the She-Kind. We actually had like a 10 to 12 page PowerPoint deck that had inspirations that we were pulling from the story that we saw behind these characters. We put the time in, and we really pulled from our individuality to build these races. So going in, it wasn't like, hey, I have an idea, verbally. We had these decks that we would hand off to our artists, and they would bring our ideas to life. It was probably one of my favorite experiences about building this game. It was right in the beginning, and Chris said, we have an artist. Everybody take a race, build it yourself, your dream race, what you've always wanted it to be. And I was like, okay, I can get on board with this. And I just remember building these decks and pulling inspiration from games when I was a kid, and animes that I've seen, and cartoons, and just things that have shaped who I am as a person. So when you guys play with these races, you're really going to be getting a taste of Salpy and Shaper and Hamaro and Hero and anyone else who ends up developing races in the future. They're really from our heart to you guys. So I just want to touch on that. It was a very personal experience at the same time, and I think that's what resulted in this immersive art that really tells a story. And Salpy, the second part of the question was, additionally, what are some of the challenges you face throughout the character development and balance?
Yeah, so the balance has definitely been tough, but we've had a multitude of calculators over. I've been just building our own internal calculators of like how much is this stat worth versus this stat. It's come to the point where each role has a specific number assigned to it. The height, the unit count, the energy, the health, every buff, every curse, the movement type, the range, and then the skills are something that can kind of get added on as more you get the results from play testing to see how often these things are triggering. And actually, the lucky dice, I actually do have a number that I use of like, okay, if they need a lucky dice to hit this, I can go look if they're attacking with 3, 4, 5, 6 attack. How does it scale as they get stronger and stronger? How often should that hit? So it's just a lot of number crunching, and a lot of play testing to see how the characters kind of play out. But let me move on to the next character, and we can keep talking about this. So the next character is Jake Allen. So he is also from the Fallen World, but within his lore, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shaper, he is basically a demon hunter. He actually has an advantage over all these characters that like to be cursed, and that's what the heretics role is they look for units that have curses and kind of take advantage of them. So you kind of have the heretics and the sinful kind of playing against each other like that, and we'll go through his skills real quick to talk about his play style. So his first skill is a lucky block. Is called Enchanted Armor. So while he's defending any attack, he's able to block an additional hit if he gets that lucky hit. If the attacker is engaged with him and Jake Allen completely blocks the attack, he can give out the attack curse. So he can basically break their weapon on his armor because he blocked the whole thing. The next one is Holy Flail. So this is his attack that's specifically geared towards those sinful units. So during this attack, if the target has at least one curse or is a lost type unit, and just to go over Lost real quick, Lost is our AI. So anytime there's an AI running around, they're referred to as the Lost. It's a non-player controlled character. So as far as player-to-player combat, if the unit has a curse and he rolls a lucky hit, he will add 1 extra to his attack. So if he finds Gula with the attack curse, he's like, good, I get a lucky hit, I can get that extra damage in, and also the last part of the skill is he can then cleanse a curse off that target. So he's actually using his Holy Flail to rip curses off of people and doing extra damage on them. We had skills before where it was more name-based, so it was like Holy Flail will deal increased damage to a character if it is both fallen and sinful. Which we still might have certain things like that in the future, but we tried to focus more into actually building it into the mechanics of, not just saying because they're X, Y happens. It's like, no, it's a functionality bit of how the character is actually built affecting a different character. The last skill we have is Light's Hope. So the first time that he would take damage that would defeat him, he will drop down to 1 health, roll a couple, and basically ignore that death. He's going to roll a couple dice and see if he can heal back a little bit more. If he's lucky, he has to roll a lucky block for each of those heals. But essentially, if he gets hit, he's got that last chance of, I got 1 health, maybe a couple more if I roll really lucky to continue on. So he's our tank that just looks for cursed units to attack.
Jake is really fun to play. And it's really great when you're like, oh, they drafted a sinful. I'm going to grab Jake and I'm going to hunt that sinful down. And he's got his double mace flails. And you could just imagine him swinging them on their heads. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so you're going to see Gula, who's attacking Jake, trying to heal herself by eating, him and her allies. And then you have Jake coming in with the Holy Flail, trying to destroy her because she's got curses on her because she likes curses. And just to add on one more other thing, which we can show the Sentience card at the end, but Fear's card, technically where Fear originates from, the big Sentience, he is a fallen sinful. So his gameplay mechanics are, all of his curses are beneficial, and he will move around the board spawning tentacles, cursing everyone in the vicinity, including itself. So it will go around buffing itself throughout the game and also trying to curse everyone. So he actually synergizes pretty well with other fallen sinful even if they're not on the same team, because he might be facing Gula, who is attacking him, and give Gula the attack curse, which she loves. So it's not necessarily like, oh, because it's on my team it works. It's baked into the mechanics of why this lore makes sense and how these characters interact with each other.
I also just want to add here that in the world of the fallen, you saw that there was the sinful, but here Jake's listed as a heretic. I think it's an important distinction because he's not all good. I think that there's going to be some gray areas in the world of the fallen, and he's one of my favorite characters for that reason. That Jake he toes the line quite a bit to fight against evil. And I just dropped something fun for you guys watching here in Discord, so enjoy.
Okay. So the next two characters we'll be going over are not from Shadow of Fear. They are all from the next expansion, Heart of Desire. So the first one is Michael the Cherub, which probably most of you have never seen before. So the overarching mechanics behind the Lamplighter race, and Nick, if you want to give Himaro, you want to give a spiel real quick, just talking about the Lamplighters?
Yeah, so the Lamplighters were my race to design, and they have a really, really cool backstory. So they live in the universe of Gildan, and Gildan is made up of two planes. The upper plane is called Lucerna, and that's where the Lamplighters, which are kind of like your bright and rainbow type environment, your more holy side, and then you have the universe of Caligo below that, and that's kind of enshrouded in darkness. And on both sides of the Lamplighters, you have a set of lamps that bring balance to the universe, containing two different types of fire. You have the Amaterasu and the fire of Lucerna. One of them is kind of bright and almost like Aurora Borealis, and the other one is very dark and almost purple and ominous. So these lamps were crafted in the universe by another character who I don't think you'll see here tonight, Lampros. He's the crafter of the lamps, and he is the one who kind of maintains balance in this universe. And between the two realms, they are trying to capture all of the lamps so that they can kind of swing the favor in their advantage. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in between that, but that's the overarching theme of the Lamplighters.
Thank you. So in that idea, you have the kind of the holy and the shadow, and the idea behind their mechanics is the holy are going to focus on healing. So if you'll see here, and we can run through his abilities real quick. His first ability is called Fountain of Youth. And using his defense stat, Michael targets a unit and rolls. For every defense die rolled, that target will heal for 1. So the Lamplighters on the holy side are much more focused, will have a lot of like healing built in different ways. Not always as direct as just like a straight heal, but there will be fun mechanics built into how they work. For instance, Flamaven, who's a giant phoenix, will fly over the battlefield, and if she activates a certain ability, she'll heal units that kind of fall through her holy flame. His next ability is Saving Grace, so target a friendly unit and move them adjacent to Michael. So this is a great way to be like, oh, I gotta get you out of here. Like, Sphere is about to do a big AoE, or, you've been encircled by the enemy team, so I can pull you out. He's very much a support character. And then the last skill he has is called Milo's Assistance. So Milo is the little cat you can see next to him.
Yes.
The little white cat. And this move says during a friendly character's turn, they may use their cast ability action to allow Michael to use one of his abilities on themselves. So even when he's not active, I could say, oh, I'm using Gula right now, and I can activate Michael to use Saving Grace on me. So as long as he's in range. Or use the Fountain of Youth on me as long as he's in range. So he's got a little lower energy than most. He's got 2 energy, but that support and that ability to actually be used while it's not his turn is kind of what makes up for it and makes him very strong as a support character.
And fun fact for those of you who aren't in Discord reading the chat, Michael the Cherub, as well as the cat Milo, are actually based off of my firstborn son and his cat Milo. So when we developed this character, I think my son was only about 2 years old. And I asked the artist, I said, can you make it look like he's closer to about 7 years old? So he had a really fat face when he was 2, and I sent him a picture of the cat, and I was so happy when this came back. It's like really, really a great thing. And now I have a second son, so who knows what character that's going to be called. I got to make it still. So look out for that as another character in the Lamplighters. There is a question, is there a timetable for Heart of Desire? I think we don't have a direct timetable. I think our goal would be end of 2025 and 2026. What do you think?
It would be, I would say 2025.
2025? Yeah, I think that's what we would think, hopefully.
I would say it depends.
It depends.
Yeah.
It could, that's a moving date at this
on
time.
Getting, the way this kind of worked is we have 46 characters built and done already. Character models, not all the artwork, but the skills, all sorts of things. And just due to the way we so we have content ready for years to come. It's just, the logistics and how do we roll it out and how do people like things. And we also want to get some feedback on the game before we put out the new game too. We want to, because we're going to go into the actions and some of the ways you can interact in the game, because we want to add on to the game just with every expansion that comes on. And we'll talk about that more later. But Shaper, if you had anything else to say.
No, just that it depends.
Yeah.
It could be.
So let me finish the thought. So the Lamplighters, like I said, one side focuses on healing. When you get down to the Shadow side, they focus on anti-healing. So their effects will be, which I don't have anything to show right now, will look at trying to prevent people from healing, or they will be susceptible to healing in a negative way. So Michael could actually use the heal on an enemy unit to try and deal damage to them, because anytime they actually receive healing, it's a negative effect. So that's the balance between the Holy and the Shadows for the Lamplighter race.
Yeah, from a thematic perspective, that's just the two different types of lamp fires kind of battling one another. It's a cool idea. I love that. I love that idea and how it's been implemented.
So, the last race, which is part of Heart of Desire as well, is the Sheet Kind. Their overarching premise is that they are the ones that take advantage of the building and the crafting system that we built into the game, which we'll talk about soon. So this is Lockgreen and Bib. All the Sheet Kind characters is and I'll try to explain the lore a little bit real quick, because this is Hannah's race. But essentially the Sheet Kind is a race of women that live on Mars that have left Earth and have found symbiotic ways to kind of coexist with these animals and create like sim links. And they have men working for them in the fields and things. So you'll see some of these characters rolling out over time. But their gameplay role is that they will interact with the building and crafting mechanics in a special way. And if we go through Lockgreen and Bib, and like none of these are final as far as the Heart of Desire stuff. So these is all still a work in progress with testing and things, but her first skill is called Bib's Rampage. So while she's moving down a road, Lockgreen may cheap shot any unit she engages with, then disengages. So she has the ability to run through, while she'll still get cheap shot too, but she could get cheap shots back at those people. So she benefits from building roads to kind of run down them and try to cheap shot people along the way. Their second ability is called Deconstruct. So she can actually take the walls that other people have built, or friends, or whoever it is, destroy the wall and turn it back into a material because she wants to use it somehow. She wants to get rid of that line of sight. She is a ranged character, so she wants to get rid of those walls. The third skill she has is called Radium Shot. So, like I said, she is a ranged character, and it says, during this attack, if the target is not engaged with Lockgreen and Bib, rolling at least one lucky hit gives the target the attack curse. If the target cannot receive the attack curse, it is add one extra hit instead to this attack. So, a unit that cannot receive the attack curse is a couple different things. One is they don't actually have a curse that they can fill in. It's blank, so they just are going to take an extra damage instead. This could refer to the lost units. So all of the AI cannot be cursed. So anytime that she uses Radium Shot on a lost unit, she would essentially get that extra attack bonus. And then the third is if she has been pounding on someone and got them to have the attack curse and they're cursed, they can't get it anymore. So then that's another way she's adding that extra hit onto her attack by repeatedly cursing this person, and they aren't, they either haven't fished enough or gotten the items or gotten the right play of characters to kind of cleanse themselves to keep going. Yep, and that's so that's kind of a little foreshadow of how the characters will play with the Heart of Desire, and then like I said, each Heart of Desire and Shadow of Fear are standalone games, so you could just buy one, buy the other, but if you mix them together, you get some crazy dynamics between the characters going on, and because you could play with the new sentients and the old survivors or mix and match however you want. It plays across different all the theme boxes. Okay.
Can I also just add that I think this is really important for everyone who wants to play this game to know, which is we're going to be incredibly supportive of customs and customs communities,
Yes.
and anyone making anything you want to play within our systems, and selling them if you want. So we have really no limitations or restrictions on how you can create that. We're actually trying to invest in getting tools out to you so that you can start to use those tools to make your own characters and make sure they're balanced. Tony has a great tool that's up already on the website. It's probably going to need some refining before it's that. But between this box and the next, go wild. We'd love to see what you guys come up with in your own characters, and we're going to be super supportive of that. And we're excited to see, what the community does come up with.
And one extra thing, just a tease I'll talk about, and this is something that we've discussed for a while. There isn't any concrete plans in it yet, but there will be another race, which I'll call for now the Void Walkers, which we'd like to get the community involved in tournaments and things, and then the winners of those tournaments may be able to make those characters of that race, and it'll be a whole kind of build on to see, it's a way to get the community involved in tournaments and games and stuff, and also for us to have build you some of these characters for memories of the big tournaments won or whatever else.
In other words, source is not the only thing that's open source. TimeStrike is open source as well. So
yes,
come be a part of it, please. We'd love for you all to be a part of it.
Okay, so let's get into some of the nitty-gritty about what you're doing while you're playing TimeStrike. So essentially, you're picking a character, and you're looking at that energy number, and you're seeing the number 3. So that means you can use 3 unique actions. So on the left is a player turn cheat sheet where it says you can move and you can perform actions, and then there's the action list. So when you're playing, you can go fishing, you can go mining, you can climb the sentience, you could tame a monster, you could cast an ability, you could attack, you could trade, and you could contest. And I'll dive into some of these real quick. So fishing is a simple mechanic of sitting next to water, rolling a dice, and seeing if you successfully caught a fish. Contest is a unique mechanic in which 2 units can fight for position. So if my character is on a lower point, your character is on a higher point, I can contest you to either push your character 1 hex in any direction or swap positions with your character. And there's a couple numbers that come into play when you're doing that. One is health. So for every health that you have, you're going to add to your d20 roll. And for every hex higher, you're going to add to your d20 roll. So positioning and healthy characters will play into this because in our game we do take advantage. We do have height advantage, which you can use to just have bigger attacks. There's something in the game called jump attacks for our melee characters. Fighting for position is super important, and trying to stay high and keep your characters healthy will help with that. But like I said, when you're playing through your character, the actions are unique. So you can't just go, I'm going to fish 3 times, I'm going to mine 3 times, I'm going to climb the sentience 1, 2, or I'm going to attack someone 3 times. You have to think about it. You have to look at the board and say, all right, how can I do 3 different actions on this board and end up where I want to and get the most out of it? So I might start near water and I'll fish. I'll see if I can get a fish, and then I'll walk by a obsidian on the ground and I'll say, oh, I'll mine that as my second action, and then you'll end up next to a tentacle, and you'll say, okay, I'll try to kill this tentacle, so then I can get an item, and it's safer in this area because there's not going to be a tentacle to attack me. So that would be like a really, really good turn. If you got a fish, you picked up some material, and then you defeated a tentacle. And then after that character is done, you would mark them as exhausted, and you would keep going around, like I said, until all the characters are exhausted. This does mean, though, in our game, that you do have a negative effect as you lose characters. So if your teammate has 3 characters and you're down to 1, they'll be able to go 3 times. You'll only be able to go once. So it is important to try and keep all of your characters alive and keep them safe and work as a unit, rather than being able to just, oh, I have 1 character left, I'm going to use him 3 times, and they're going to use all 3 characters individually. So loss is really impactful in this. And then on the right side, I have another example of the cheat sheet, just saying, like, if you're next to water, you're going to roll a dice. If it's a 10 or higher, you're going to draw a fish. And we'll go into fish in a bit. All right, next. Crafting and building. So this goes right into the cheat sheet. So just like that video we watched earlier, on the right side, it says you can build roads and walls. So when you're mining, material is very important in this game. Because of those facts that you can build roads and walls. So roads, sorry, something in my eye. Roads you can lay down from wherever your character is, just in a line, or as long as they're connected. And if you're on a road existing, you can just build off of that road. So there will be very long roads, possibly, more and more ways to get around as time goes on. Pending there isn't a sentience that sits on it and destroys it all, or people throwing bombs and blowing it up. But roads are useful because they allow you to move from one point to any other point on that road, as long as it's not blocked, for one move. So building those and connecting them is very important the later time goes on. The second thing you can build is walls. Using one of those materials, you can place those walls around you. If you have 3 material, you can just place walls in a circle around you and kind of watch out for those ranged attacks, or if fear is going to do an area of effect attack, you can protect yourselves and prep for those kinds of things. The other side says crafting. So these are kind of, the way these are used is they're in the moment kind of assisting actions or other scenarios. So the first thing is hang glider. So let's say someone contests me off of a ledge and tries to throw me down into a pit. Well, if I had a material on me, I could pop that material and say, all right, I'm going to use this to build a hang glider and ignore that falling damage. The second one is a fishing net. So if I'm going to do the fish action, I could say, I'm just going to use this material, craft a fishing net, and guarantee my next fish action rather than rolling for it. Because you don't know. You could have a bad night of rolling. You're rolling 1s and 2s on your D20, and you're like, I'm just going to use this because it's safer and I can guarantee myself an outcome. The last one is the monster trap. So taming in TimeStrike is a series of getting the monster's health down, feeding them a fish, and then rolling a dice. So for every multiple, I'll go over the exact process. So you go up to a monster and you give it a fish. Then you're in the taming action. Then you're going to look at its health bar and it's going to say, whatever their health is remaining. You're going to times that by 3, and that's what you need to roll on a d20. So if it's got 5 health, you would have to roll a 15 or higher to successfully tame it. If it's got 1 health left, you only need a 3. So getting them closer to low health is important, or just safer for you to tame them. If you fail to tame them, they will deal a damage back to you. Just a free cheap shot against you. You can use a monster trap to ignore that and say, hey, I'm going to roll for it, but I'm going to use this just so I don't get a free damage, done back to me, essentially. But the last part is, if you successfully tame them, they'll also regain 2 health. So even if they're at 1, it's still worth it to try and tame them because they'll get a little bit of health back, especially if you have some other items or fish waiting to kind of get their health up even more. So that's building and crafting. Trials. So on the left is this is the latest addition to the game. So as we talked about, survivors are the only ones that can awaken, and they awaken by completing these trials. So on the left is Ghoulish Trials, and it shows you what you need to do to unlock each stat. So her first one says when a contest roll, she can awaken the move stat. Regain 1 health with Devour, which is that skill where if she deals damage or if she attacks someone and rolls that lucky hit, if she does in fact regain 1 health, she'll unlock her attack stat. The last one she needs is the regain 1 health with Corpse Feast. So that means that a unit she's engaged with has to die and she has to heal 1, and then she can get that defense stat. In that case, if she completes all 3 of those trials, she is fully awakened. And on the right side, I have the example of Mara's. She has to hit a target with her Frost Nova. She has to have at least 2 units in the Blizzard's AoE while she's attacking. And like I said, we attack friendly units and ourselves if we're in the attack. So if she's doing a head to head, and there's only 1 unit, and she's like, I have to get this unlocked, she could just throw herself in there and do a blizzard on herself and her target, and it's gonna unlock that stat. It said also the next one is while attacking, inflict damage and roll at least 1 lucky hit. So that's where that lucky comes into play again. That's how she gets her attack stat. And below that is another one that talks about her defense stat, and I believe it's tied with Ice Barrier. So, trials. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I really enjoy Trials. I think that it does 2 things. If you're a new player and you get a character, by looking at your trials and reading through it, it kind of gives you a guide on how to play them effectively and efficiently. So it says, hey, hit a target with Frost Nova. It teaches you how to use Frost Nova, and then try to use the AoE potential of Blizzard, and try to get a lucky hit. Like, the whole experience of it is very, I think, new player friendly and helps them adopt the game a little bit more quickly. It's like a built-in guide for each character. And then on the other side, for a more experienced player, they come in and they say, okay, I'm going to try to knock this out in like 2 turns. And then they come up with a strategy where maybe they can blizzard and get the lucky hit simultaneously, right? So for your more experienced player, they come in and they're going to be like, okay, I want to pump these trials out in the most efficient way possible. And then on a new player side, they're sitting there like, okay, this holds my hand as I learn the character. So I think the trials were a really, really great addition, something that I really, really enjoy and make the game give you some direction with your characters that you can really use throughout the game, and especially, like I said, as a new player.
Thank you. So, talking about trials, talking about crafting, talking about building. These are just starting points. As we get through different games as we move forward with the TimeStrike franchise and the different boxes and things, these can be manipulated, these can be changed, these can be updated. So for instance, if I go back to the crafting and building, we plan on having new things to build and new things to craft with Heart of Desire. We've talked about some wild things, we haven't play tested things yet, but I always like to say I want to build a cannon, or something, I can launch bombs or something like that, or I want to use a material to build extra armor, or who knows. These are systems that are built so that they can be added onto over time and just create. And a lot of this will be driven by what the community wants. Like we're gonna have TimeStrike feedback, and they're gonna say, "Oh, well, I wish I played it this way, and I wish I could craft this. I wish I could build this." And it's gonna be fun, kind of discovering what fits in our world, what fits in the game, and what everyone comes up with to just add on continually. And the TimeStrike rulebook will constantly be evolving and upgrading and just making a more expansive game. And then the same thing with the trials. The trials don't necessarily always need to be these customized things. We could have specific game modes where everyone has similar trial cards. It's like, the trial is you have to kill X amount of tentacles. You have to jump on Fear's back and hit him in the head. It could be to knock a character, like kick a character off a bridge, stuff like that. You could get really unique with these trials in the future, but this is, the way we're kind of moving forward with it is just to teach people about the characters and just have them really use the characters to their full potential to then increase their potential. But this is, like I said, these are all built to be adapted, to be built onto. The probably the most important thing about the trial, though, is at the bottom of the left one, you could see, upon awakening all stats, discard this card and draw 1 artifact. Artifacts are an important part of being a survivor. The way artifacts are built is it is an item, no, it's an artifact that a survivor can equip one of. So if you have 2 artifacts, you'd have to choose which one to equip, but you could always keep one in your inventory, trade it to another survivor, etc. But the way artifacts work in our game is there's 3 sections on an artifact. In the middle, you can see equipped stats. I'll start there because that's pretty simple. So if I equipped Jake Allen's breastplate, I get +2 move, +1 defense. Super basic. If I equip the fishing rod of Hod, I get 1 move, 1 attack. Very simple. And just a great thing to have. It's like 2 stat bonuses just built onto this. On the top right of each card is a skill from the character the artifact derives from. So Jake Allen's breastplate has enchanted armor as a skill that you can now unlock on any character. So if I'm Gula and I'm fighting Jake Allen who's got enchanted armor, if I had this artifact, I would also have that skill to use myself. So artifacts have created this interesting way to basically, in a small way, mix skills of characters and see how they affect each other. And like you see at the top right, we didn't go over Hod, but he's an excellent fisherman. And if you get his fishing rod, then this unit only needs to roll a 6 or higher to successfully complete the fish action, and may use the fish action while occupying a water tile. So you get his artifact, you get a little piece of him, a little bit of his strength, and mix it into your set of skills.
Yeah, artifacts. Artifacts are really fun. I think the thing that I liked the most was like having the artifact actually bring a piece of the other character with them. So like Salpy said, like if I'm Hod and I get Jake Allen's breastplate, all of a sudden you imagine this fisherman with this really jacked breastplate that's going to give him enchanted armor. And I think it's really cool that just as an artifact you can mix and match abilities from other characters to your existing characters. And what that allows you to do is find these really strong combinations where you're like, oh, this works really well with this individual. I didn't even think about that. And it'll just inherently and kind of organically happen as you're playing.
Now, there is one more aspect to these, and it's when the character that the artifact belongs to equips it. So, for instance, Hod's fishing rod. If Hod equips it, he can now use the fish action twice on his turn. So, it's basically upgrading his strongest component, which is he's a master fisherman. Now he can fish twice. It keeps him alive. It keeps him buffed. It plays into his skills, which you haven't seen. But that's his core, is he's a fisherman. And it plays into his strength a lot. Another instance is Jake Allen's breastplate. If he equips it himself, every time he uses Holy Flail successfully, he can cleanse a curse off of himself. So not only is he dealing extra damage and cleansing a curse off his enemy, he can now keep himself cleansed of curses at the same time that he's doing this. So there's an additional effect that goes onto the character if they equip it themselves that makes their already built-in skills or actions stronger. And the other one I'll talk about, which is a little bit cut off, but Roland. Roland is a character that jumps between stances. He has an attack stance and a defensive stance. And when he equips his gauntlets, jumping between those stances, he gets buffs every time he moves between them. So it encourages him to jump between those stances as often as possible because he will keep buffing himself as he does it. So artifacts, and another way to think about artifacts is, they change up the game so much for every box you get too. So all of a sudden you pick up Heart of Desire. Now you might get Michael the Cherub staff and equip it on Gula, and now she has a heal she can cast on her allies. So every time you get a new box, a new set of characters at these artifacts, it's creating these crazy new dynamics that could, make a character just completely feel completely different. And I'll Himaro Shaper, if there's anything else you want to add on to that.
No, just that Gula with healing ability seems broken.
Won't know
Well,
until
it
No,
we try
depends
it.
if you're fighting someone who has an anti-healing ability or
of
something like
course, of
that.
course. No, I think the artifacts are just an incredible way to kind of diversify your strategies with characters that you like. Um, we probably didn't cover it, but of course, if you defeat a character and they have an artifact and items on them, you get their stuff. So
Hmm.
let's say you are playing as Jake Allen and Gula does have your breastplate. That's just made Gula a big target for you because now you want to get your breastplate to equip it on the character who it belongs to and unlock this new ability. That's another way that these kind of become highly sought after throughout the course of a game is you might be seeking a particular artifact that works really well with your character or this particular synergy that you've built into your team. And when somebody else discovers it, through completing their trials, they've just made themselves a really big target for you. So I do love that aspect of this and how that, again, it just continues to add to the sort of meta of what you're thinking through and adapting as the game progresses.
And from a thematic standpoint, the reason that these are kind of being found in the void is when these characters all got pulled from their timelines into the void. They dropped these and they got scattered all around the void. So you're digging them up out of the sand, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, look at this breastplate! I don't know who it belongs to, but I'm putting it on." Or look at these gauntlets that look like they could tear through metal. Like really, really cool thematic style behind it, and I really like that you can only equip one of these to a character. I find that it makes them feel more like an epic or a legendary item that you would get in like a video game where you get there and you get like an orange or a purple colored item and you're like, oh, this is really, really special. Rather than like, well, I need like 6 of these and now I'm gearing up this character. You just get one, and they're really, really unique, and they add a lot of flavor and again, replayability to the game.
And to build on that, where he started talking about the lore a little bit, and I might have glossed over this earlier, the story behind the void essentially is why we have all these races and why there's a sentience is that these universes are colliding. You have the universe of the meek and the fallen and the lamplighters and the sheep kind, and they're colliding into what we call the void, which is this end of time. So the survivors, which is why they're called survivors, are the ones that make it through that collapse of their world and end up in the void. So that's why there's this mix match of characters. That's why there's items all over the place, and we're gonna go into items now and fish. And all of these things are from who knows what universes that have already collapsed and died and left their remains in the void. So there's a lot of things that will build onto and allow you to discover, and because it's kind of this graveyard of universes. Okay. Fish and items. So I talked about fishing. I said you go next to a body of water, you roll a d20 at 10 or higher, you draw a fish card. Why is that important? Fish are probably the strongest survival element in the game. So they allow you to regain health. So at the top right, you can see the scaly fish. Regain 1 health on this unit. Very simple. The left top one, a little bit more rare type of fish, is called a sweet urchin. This allows you to regain a health and give it a buff, or give yourself a buff, or regain a health and remove a curse from yourself. So these are ways to kind of make sure your character stays healthy. Constantly fishing and having these stored away is a good way to stay alive. And there's other things you can find while you're fishing too. The others, the 2 listed below, are 2 example items. So one is the Hand of God. So when this unit would take any amount of damage, you can use this to prevent all of that damage. The other one is the rocket-powered skateboard. Whenever this unit is targeted by an attack skill or contest, they can use this to basically get out of there and waste that attack skill or contest that was on them, and speed off in a specific direction. And items. So we didn't talk about how you collect items. So the primary way to collect items depends on the game mode. So if you're playing the boss battle royale, or if you're playing the co-op, the boss raid, every time you inflict damage to a lost unit, you will draw an item. So this incentivizes you, especially in the boss battle royale, to kind of focus on the AI because they're giving you the biggest rewards by defeating them and getting some loot, because there's all sorts of stuff in here that you'll see as you play the game. The skirmish mode just flips it and says every time you inflict damage to an enemy, draw an item. It makes it so that there's constantly these new variables getting added as you keep playing out. Because you're also completing trials if you're a survivor and getting items and building walls and roads and things. But this is a simple kind of reward way to say, hey, just keep attacking, keep moving, keep pushing the game forward, because you're going to get rewarded for it more and more and more as you play through. And there's all sorts of crazy items that we have in the game. You can manipulate the landscape of the map, you can blow holes in it, you can teleport around, you can the easier way to tame monsters. There's all sorts of things you could do with items. Okay. All right, and the last thing I'll get into, and I don't necessarily have the best graphic, is our AI. So on the left-hand side is the red card, which is the AI for the boss battle royale, and on the right-hand side is the gray, is the AI for the boss raid, which they function a little bit differently based on how we've built out the game modes. But essentially, a lot of it is based on just fear will have certain targets, or sentiences, excuse me, will have just a scenario breakdown whenever they go. So step one.
Can you zoom in
fear,
on the one you're going to talk about, Tony? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so one of the unique ways that we reset initiative in the boss battle royale is whoever's character, if you have a unit on your team who's the highest on fear, you will get initiative set to your team. There's no dice roll in that regard. So it's a constant way for people to it's a good way for people, it's an incentive for people to climb fear, not only to attack him and get some items and also damage him down so you can kill him, but also gain the advantage from being able to go first every round by keeping that height up there. The second step says for every lost monster, fear heals for 1 health. So within the boss battle royale, he'll have a couple monsters running around, and essentially them staying alive is healing him and keeping him alive. So for that mechanic specifically, you want to either tame the monsters or kill the monsters so that you can start focusing down fear. It goes into a host of other steps, which I'll run through real quick. So step 3, each lost monster will attack. Essentially, step 3 is wherever the monsters are, they're going to target the closest unit to them. They're going to move to them, and they're going to attack. Step 4, tentacles are going to move to the closest unit and also move towards them using the lost move. Okay, yeah. Step 4, the tentacles are going to move. Step 5, they're going to spawn more tentacles based on the player count. So that's where that scalability comes in. Character count. So if you're playing with 8 characters or 2 characters, it spawns a different amount of tentacles. Step 6, fear will target the closest player unit. He's also moving based on proximity. Sometimes it's the farthest player unit, sometimes it's the closest player unit, and we'll add different scenarios of why they'll move or target different things in the future. Step 7, he's going to do an AoE attack in the area and add +1 to that attack. So there's a separate card, which I should have put on here, that has all the lost stats. It has all the lost stats, so you can say, oh, all the AI is attacking for this. This is all their movement, all their range, all their attack, all their defense. And then step 8, all players within lost range of fear or the tentacles will receive the attack curse. So after all that, attacking, moving, whatever, they're going to curse everyone in the area too. If I move over to the other card, so this is a card in the boss raid. This one says lost monsters will move to the closest unit and attack them, adding +1 to their attack for step 1. Step 2, the tentacles are going to move. Step 3, they're going to spawn more tentacles. Step 4, fear envelops the void and darkness. The range stat of all player units is reduced to 1 for the duration of the next round. So that's kind of one of those more game changers across the board, because you might have a team full of range characters and you've been firing off. But fear is like, well, for this round, everyone's range stat is 1. No one can see. The darkness of the void has come down. Step 5, player units within range of fear are going to get the silence curse, which I could just talk about real quick. At the bottom of those character boards, you saw a little slot for silence. If you are silenced, you have access to 0 skills, even if it's an artifact. So when you're silenced, it's only lasts for your next turn, but it's super detrimental because so many of these characters, their skills, their playstyle is built into their skills. So being silent sucks. And then lastly, Fear will target the farthest player unit and move towards them using the lost move +2. So this has him just rolling around the map. And something to note is wherever Fear stops, he knocks, and there's a whole description of how it works. He knocks all the units out, like away from him, and he'll destroy everything in the area until there's a flat surface. So if there's a wall, if there's a road, if there's a bridge, whatever, he'll flatten it. And if it so happens that the place he lands destroys a support for a high rise or an overhang, and that overhang gets destroyed, your character's probably going to have to roll for falling damage if they were up there, depending on where they fell. So him just moving around can also wreak havoc on your positioning and your health if you're on too high a spot. And that covers TimeStrike. And this last portion, I wanted to open it up to a Q&A session and just, anything that you thought of while we were going through everything or any new questions you might have now. Here is an example where you can see the character boards laid out and all the cubes in them. So like all the cubes are filled in, and as those things happen to you, you will remove them so you can see those stats underneath and then calculate differently. And then you see at the bottom left, someone harvested some gold material. So that's in their inventory. And I guess this is another good point real quick. All the characters have individual inventories, so as they're going around getting items, fish, materials, that's all local to the character, and there is a trade mechanic between characters. But if someone defeats that character, they'll take all that loot. So it's important to spend all your stuff to, not only survive and win, but just so somebody else doesn't get it if they knock you out.
Something to mention with TimeStrike as well is that it is playable with all the source environment themes that we have in the Game Found Pledge Manager and that were included in Kickstarter. So no matter what environment themes you chose from, you can use that to play TimeStrike. As a company, we plan on, or at least the way we viewed this, is that when new games come out, we'll have environment themes that are ideal and kind of made for them from a thematic perspective, but that we follow a formula where all of the environment themes are typically going to be playable with those games, at least the ones developed by Adventure Together. So you never have to say, oh, I don't have the right set of source to play with the new Adventure Together game. It'll always be, oh, which environment theme of source do I want to play this new Adventure Together game on? Do I want TimeStrike to be in a desert? Do I want TimeStrike to be in a pit of lava? Do I want TimeStrike to be on a mountaintop with grassy plains below it and a waterfall? Whatever you want, that can be the void of the night, which I always find really, really fun. It just, again, gives you another layer of immersion and is really, really fun. How is the source map created?
Hold
on.
Oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
have one more point on that as well. There will be a living, breathing encyclopedia of old biomes and new biomes every time one is launched to tell you what type it is. There will be buildable types, there will be resources, there will be base types, there will be liquid types, and as new games out and introduce new types, because they may, we'll make sure that the old types are classified in that new game. I'm talking totally separate from TimeStrike, in any new games sort of mechanics. So that's something that we're very cognizant of. No matter what set of source you have, you should be able to play all of our games, and you should know exactly what tiles you can use to represent what things. That was really important to us as we started to build out this, massive, scalable, open source, 3D modular world building type experience.
Adjective.
Yeah, lots of adjectives. We're on top of that, and we'll make sure it's readily accessible to you guys.
I love that. 2 questions from Patrick. How is the source map created when preparing to play TimeStrike? Does play scale based on the size of the map?
It's scale. So 2 parts to that. One is, there's instructions on a small amount of requirements of what needs to be in the map. Specifically, it's really just material counts. which you can go above or below depending on the experience you want. But we do have recommendations of how many materials per character you should put in the game and how much water should be around. But it's really up to you to try and make those different experiences. Because if you only have one water hex and it's in the dead center of the map and fear starts on top of it, you could have a really interesting game, and Hod may not be the best choice of character for that kind of map.
It would be called Battle of the Pond.
Yeah, so we do have... Go ahead.
I was just going to add that as well, if you just wanted to play a two-player game on a massive scaled map, there are mechanics that are in the game that don't penalize you from doing so. For instance, the road system enables you to very quickly move around a large map. So the idea was we wanted to build a game where you could scale it to any size and it still plays smoothly. And we've definitely achieved that through all sorts of different means, not to mention the item cards. There's a lot of item cards that have teleportation and whatnot. There's terraforming the map. So whether it's a super small map or a super large map, no matter how many players you have, or players you don't have, the game will play. And it plays very smooth.
Yep.
The other question, is it a custom player built map every time, or are there some preset maps?
So I just want to, I think the most important answer to this, the first thing I'll say is we're building a very, very awesome map building tool that'll be available for people to build their own maps and share them and build campaign maps and build maps that are for competitive play. It's going to be incredibly featureful, and we're super excited to share more about that when it's ready. Tony, I'll let you talk about TimeStrike in particular, but generally speaking, every source game, we're going to enable tons of ways, not only for the community to build pre-built maps, but we'll release some and they're going to be readily accessible, available. They're going to have easy build orders, everything we know you guys love and want from a sort of modular map and terrain system. We're building really, really exciting stuff on the back end.
What was the other question? Oh, the
custom player built map
in terms
every
of time,
or are there some preset maps for TimeStrike?
Oh, yeah, we do not. I don't think we'll have any preset ones in the. We'll get some pictures in of some basic layouts that you could follow. Nothing like set in stone of like this water hex goes here, this goes here, but we'll have some pictures to help people, use their imagination. Because honestly, every time we get our hands on it, we're just like, oh well, I want water here, I want mountain here, I want this here. But yeah, we'll have some pictures in there.
And then from Tales of Valhalla, how big is the rulebook?
So the rulebook is about, it's not small, it's about 40 pages. However, there is a large portion of that is dedicated to things like setting up the map, which you'll only, that's a good set of pages that really doesn't pertain to TimeStrike itself. There's another set of rules that will talk about rules within the different game modes and how to set up for those different game modes. So if you pick, oh, we're just playing this game mode, that'll cut down the rule book a bit. So we really are using those cheat sheets. Those cheat sheet cards are going to come in handy when you're trying to play around, because there's a lot of in-depth systems, or there's a lot of different systems that play out, but a lot of it is just clarification and not necessarily like I said, fishing is it's a decent section because it'll have a lot of corner cases and when you can and can't do things, but the basic rules are very simple. Like mining is stand next to mine, pick up mine, like 2 sentences, and a lot of the mechanics were formulated in that way so that they're very basic, but we have been just encountering a lot of corner cases and questions people might have throughout the years throughout play testing, so we've just got all those in the rulebook.
I would sum it up by saying that it's incredibly, because I just read through it today again. It's incredibly comprehensive, but it is by no means overwhelming for you to get a grasp on how to play the game and just jump in. So it covers all those corner cases because we know that these things come up and people want an answer and we don't want you left with ambiguity. So it's incredibly comprehensive, but to jump in and learn all the simple things you can do. I mean, it's always remarkable to me to think about, because we just spent an hour and a half talking about all the amazing and exciting things you can do. It is really very quick to learn how to do those things, and then once you're there, to do them. So yeah, I think you did a great job finding that balance between It's quick to learn everything you can do, jump into a game, start to play. But if you're going to run into an issue throughout play, you're going to be able to just jump into the book and find it. Another thing I'm keen on doing is putting QR codes throughout the book that you'll be able to scan quickly on any particular section and find a video that we release where we run you through it. I oftentimes will play a game and then think, oh, I'm just going to watch a video. I'm not going to sit here and read the rule book. And it's normally a video not done by the publisher. We'll definitely release tutorial videos, and I will make sure that throughout the rulebook they're readily accessible in case you're like, I don't want to read all these pages. So we'll be releasing tutorial stuff to make it as easy as possible for you guys to play and to learn and to jump into the experience.
Yeah, I think it's also pretty, like, a lot of rule books that I've read. 40 pages is pretty standard. This also includes the rules for all 3 different play modes, so you're really getting 3 experiences in a 40-page rule book. And just to add additional flavor, the source system adds a lot of edge cases with your height, with your adjacency, all of that. So with the hundreds of times that we've play tested, we've identified edge case after edge case, and that's what Salpy was kind of talking about. We address just about every corner case that we've ever come across to have clarification. So when you're sitting there and you're like, well, your character is engaged with mine and he's trying to fish at the same time, can I do that? You go to the rule book and you find out, no, you can't fish while you're engaged. And, oh, am I engaged? Yes or no? Oh, well, it's based on the height, and everything kind of really, really gels well together after that. There's another question in YouTube. In terms of TimeStrike events or any organized play in the future, which game mode do we see happening with it, if it at all? So I guess what game modes would we do during TimeStrike events at the high level?
Well, primarily to start would be the boss battle royale. That's our flagship mode where we think it shines the most. But we'll definitely be listening to the community if they say no. We want to skirmish. We want to have this. I want to play as Fear and attack people. We'll definitely listen to the community on that and see that. But for now, yeah, the boss battle royale will be the mode.
Yeah, and organized play is something that we as a publisher are going to grow into. We've got a lot of learning about how to do that. We're super excited to do it, of course, and we plan to enable it in the future. But doing that at a large scale is something we're going to have to grow into, and we're excited with you guys to kind of learn how to master that as best we can. We try right now to show up at all the largest events that are around the world, and we're going to start probably as early as Spiel in October, putting on some form of organized play at our space there, and getting that started. In the future, we'll look into rolling this out into retail locations and working with retail partners, all the things you've come to expect from the industry. But we're going to grow into that. For now, if you're going to the biggest cons, you'll be able to find us there, and we'll have some form of organized play for you guys to come together and play TimeStrike.
All right. I think that just about wraps up tonight's stream. Salpy, thank you for taking us through every single nook and cranny of TimeStrike. That was, even for me, that was like, I was like, oh, I forgot about that, or I learned something new. That was really, really, really good. I think the community's been itching for a deep dive into TimeStrike. I want to thank you, everyone, for stopping in tonight. A few reminders. GameFrown Pledge Manager closes June 13th. Get in there, finish your pledges, shipping, taxes. That way we make sure that we're getting Source and TimeStrike to you. We don't want anyone to miss out on that. We're sending out weekly reminders. We're sending out announcements. Please, please get in there. Also, Gen Con is coming up. Adventure Together will be there. We will be representing 3 indie developer, or 3 or 4, Chris. 3 independent developers who have been creating their own amazing games and experiences for Source. That we will be releasing more information on that in the coming weeks. We're getting those details all lined up and tied together. As soon as we have that done, though, we're going to be making an announcement where we'll be at Gen Con, what games will be being played, and what indie developers will be there. We're also going to have some sweet merch to give out like we did last year, so make sure to stop by and see us, but 100% we'll make more announcements on that in the coming weeks.
We will be in the first exposure playtest hall. So if you are interested in playing any of those games, and the 3 games are going to be Exo Pirates, Incursion Event, and Tactex, make sure that you look into what first exposure playtest hall is, first of all. And then the way it works is sort of a lottery system. So on any given day, you're going to show up with a ticket, provided you've gotten one of those tickets. And you are going and we'll release more information obviously on all our channels as we get closer to Gen Con. And then they're going to go ahead and they're going to throw up like, hey, we've got a game here. It's for this many players. It's this type of game. And if you're interested, you can go ahead and jump in on the game. So sometimes it might take you a few tries to land a spot at our table. But for those of you that know us, just come talk to us and we'll try and make it as easy as possible for you to get our game. We'll like give you the right words to look for and raise your ticket at the right time. But those are 2-hour playtest blocks, so you really get to come in. You probably get to play a few times, depending what game it is and what the length is. But we'll have all 3 of those games set up at our table. And we're really excited and looking forward to meeting you guys there and just nerding out and playing some Source games.
All right.
I'll add one last thing. For anyone who is watching this video later and you still have some additional questions about TimeStrike mechanics, anything that you saw tonight, just pop in the Discord. We have a TimeStrike Q&A or general channel. Just ask away. We're open books, so I would like to answer anything, any questions you might have, and talk about the game as much as possible because we like talking about it.
And I'll do my best to break this video into short clips that we can then push back out. So if you guys want to just in a particular area, I hope to be able to do that. And then there's some great AI tools out there. I can just get a transcript for those clips too, so you can read through that if you'd like and see what the key points are.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending. It was really, really great. We had a great turnout tonight. We had quite a few viewers on YouTube and Discord and even on Facebook tonight. So we really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to us on Discord and keep adventuring. I'm Hamaro. That's Salpy. That's Shaper. Have a great night.